Hello and welcome to Reproductive Rebel. I am your hostess, Adrienne Irizarry. As an Eastern medicine practitioner that uses holistic approaches to women's care, I tackle the elephant in the room, our collective frustration with the allopathic healthcare system. In this podcast, I give you a new way to look at your body, understand what it is telling you, and care for your reproductive health. Welcome to this journey. I'm so glad you're here. Statements made in this program are for educational purposes only and not intended as a substitution for medical consultation or advice. We do not claim to diagnose, treat, or cure any diseases. This podcast is inclusive and welcomes all gender identities. The focus of the program is on biological function, and we will use the term women throughout, but it is referencing physiological and social challenges for biology, not identity. Come as you are, I am happy you're here and welcome all performances of identity. I hope you find something helpful in this show. Dr. Lyndsey Tucker is a Doctor of Acupuncture in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. She holds 2 four-year diplomas in Acupuncture and Doctor of Traditional Chinese Medicine, as well as being certified in orthopedic testing. In addition to her base training, she has attended continuing education classes through the Acutonics Institute of Integrated Medicine in Sound Healing, low FODMAP diet training through Monash University in Australia, as well as focusing on expanding her dietary therapy knowledge with traditional Chinese medicine herbs and foods through continuing education credits. Dr. Tucker has a particular interest in women's health, focusing on non-fertility-based menstrual health. She believes you deserve healthy, happy menstrual health, regardless of your desires to conceive a child. Dr. Lyndsey noticed there was a lack of support for people who did not want to have children, and that the barriers of access to necessary health care due to this lack of interest was a problem that needed to be addressed. Traditional Chinese medicine recognizes you as a whole being and not by individual systems. With this in mind, she combines dietary therapy, herbology, acupuncture and acupressure, Tui Na massage, sound healing, and other modalities for a whole body health treatment plan to support the whole body and menstrual health alike. Acupuncture services are offered in person at local YYC Calgary, or sound therapy and cardiology readings available worldwide with online video call treatments. Welcome back to another episode of the Reproductive Rebel podcast. I am your hostess, Adrienne Irizarry. Wintertime is a time of reduced activity, according to Chinese medicine. As we transition from hibernation mode into the renewal of spring, so too does our energetic body change along with the season. Think about what spring looks like. There are buds on the trees, the flowers start to push up from the ground and reach towards the sun that is out longer each day. This feeling of the season is inside your body as well as in the world around you. Living in harmony with the rhythm of nature is the very foundation of Chinese medicine. Diagnoses sound more like a weather report, and honestly, it makes it easier to understand what's going on inside your body and how to balance things out. It's for this reason that I invite Dr. Tucker on the show today to talk about spring and considerations for the season, which will help you live healthier and reduce menstrual symptoms. We have a tradition of spring cleaning to change the energy in our homes and start anew in this season. This is the season of spring. We do this in our homes and in our lifestyles to support all the growth and quickening that happens through the year. So join me in welcoming Dr. Lyndsey Tucker. She is a doctor of acupuncture, and I am so excited to have her on the show today. Welcome, Dr. Tucker.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
So let's start with an easy one. Why is it so important to live in a seasonal way?
So in Chinese culture and traditional Chinese medicine, they believe that a person could achieve so much more health benefit if they could be in harmony with nature. And if you think about how old Chinese medicine is, being thousands of years old, it would make sense that they would naturally have to follow these rhythms. Not everybody had the ability to burn candles or have sources of light through the night. So they needed to go to bed. They needed to go with the sun so they could maximize those hours of light, doing farming, things like that. So after I think a lot of observation and time practicing with this, they started to see if you don't do it, what the negative impact will be. And if you do it, what the positive impact would be.
That's wonderful. And I can tell, even though we have our own modern technology and ways of generating light, that when the days are shorter, I want to hibernate. And when the days are longer, I want to be outside in the sun all day. So there really is this beautiful relationship between the energy inside of our body as well as what's going on in nature. So each season in Chinese medicine has different energy, and it corresponds to a different organ in Chinese medicine. Can you elaborate a little bit on how Chinese medicine organs function and how they work in this seasonal way?
Absolutely. So I'm not sure, but you may or may not be familiar with the five elements. So Chinese medicine uses five elements, whereas things such as Western astrology uses four elements. In some cases, they will use five elements. They'll include ether. They don't quite match, but there is similarities between the two systems. So in the Eastern system, they have five elements, with fire being considered one of the most important. There's four organs that are associated with the fire element. So this would be the small intestine, what the Chinese call the triple burner or the sanjiao. The closest organ that we would recognize that being would be the lymphatic system. And then we also have the pericardium, which is the protective sac around the heart, and then the heart itself. So all four of these organs have to correspond or correspond specifically with the fire element. Because it corresponds with the fire element, we also look at how this element can feed the next element that comes in line. If you look at the most traditional system, we don't have Earth out in the outer ring. It's actually in the center. It creates a cross. Whereas the modern system that we use creates a five-pointed star, and so the Earth element gets pulled out. And the theory is that fire feeds Earth. And we see this with burning. So if we ignite something, we create ash. Ash would be the equivalent of creating Earth. So we need to make sure that we guard the previous element. So in this case, we're talking about fire, to make sure that the next element has the support it needs to continue on. Earth in the case of Chinese medicine is the stomach and the spleen. And one can look at the previous setup in the cross form and understand that if you can't eat, you will not survive. And that's why it was the center of the cross. It was the most important thing to maintain. And because it's associated with earth and we are earth beings, we cannot survive without earth. We are dependent on the earth. And so we need to make sure we do all of the things possible to support that. So then from there, you have the earth is both the child of fire, but it is also the parent of the next element, which would be metal. And the Chinese look at this as, where do you find metals? You find them housed in the earth. You dig into Mother Earth to pull out your gems and your metals and your stones and all of these different aspects. And so failure to take care of that earth element could result in weakening of the metal element. And on it goes around here. So from metal, we move into water, water moves into wood, and then wood into fire. And they all have their own organs associated. So earth, spleen and stomach, metal is lung, large intestine, water would be kidney and bladder, which is so easy to remember because it just works with the waterworks. It's like our internal plumbing. So easy there.
Absolutely.
And then since we're talking about spring, this is where I'd like to leave off with the wood element. Wood element has to do with spring, and it has to do with the liver and the gallbladder. And since this is the Reproductive Rebel podcast, this is extremely important for us as women to pay attention to, because liver blood is one of the most important parts of having a healthy menstrual cycle. And though we might think, oh, well, just worry about wood. Just worry about wood. As I explained earlier, there's the mother and the son, or the father and the daughter, or the child and the parent relationships that you always have to be considering. Traditionally, it's been called mother-son. There's no gender thing specific with this. It's just terminology from ancient time trying to describe that a parent will do whatever possible. They will destroy themselves to keep their child alive. They will drain themselves. And essentially, that is what happens when you don't obey the rules or the laws of nature in this harmonious pathway that has been laid out by the Chinese tradition. So one of the things that you're going to want to make sure is that you are considering what season you're currently in, what season you're coming up to, and how to behave or how to harmonize specifically with each of those seasons. So in the case of spring, we would consider this to be the time of birth and spread. So I believe you had mentioned the budding of the flowers and things coming into bloom. In Chinese terms, the blossoming itself is the fire. So it's when we're in summer, we call it blooming and flourishing. In spring, it's really about that seed energy and the bursting forward. And what we can see through that is the growth of yang energy. So we have yin and yang as the basis of absolutely everything in the world. Everything can break down to yin and yang, including being yin within yang or yang within yin. And this is how we can account for multi-dynamics in that way. And why, they don't specifically have anything to do with gender, though they are oftentimes referred to as female or male energies. It's just aspects, and you can have aspects within aspects. So this is one of the ways that we can look at spring. Spring has a lot of yang energy. You have that birthing, that growing, that bursting out through the earth, and the seeds all coming alive, which is really an amazing thing. But there's also the substance, the seed itself. And this is some of the ways that we look at that balance is your substance, is your yin in balance? Is your yang, is your spirit in balance? And so these are the ways that we can make sure that we're attributing these while following the way of the Chinese and how they adapt to the seasons. So they say everything, including man, is expanding and growing or becoming vivid at this time. And just so everyone knows, I am sourcing the Yellow Emperor as the text for this. And with regards to the Yellow Emperor, I will explain where the fifth season comes from, because it isn't traditionally in this text, one of our classics that we study, but I can explain where it comes from. So we're going to start with spring, because that's where the Yellow Emperor likes to start. And it's technically the equinox beginning of the year. So it's funny, from autumn in October or so all the way until March, it's a series of new year beginnings. You have so much opportunity to start new things. But when you look at the actual flow of nature, this is the new year. This is when we're really starting everything. This is the beginning. So I think it's interesting how we have so many bursts of light in Western culture during the darkest times. We're always trying to expand, we're trying to party, we're trying to have a good time, which certainly we want to have the light during the dark. I think this is important. But it can explain why people are so worn out by the time spring hits. You know, they're finished all their Christmas celebrations, their holidays, maybe they're getting ready for Easter or whatever they happen to celebrate in their culture, but they're tired. And it's because they haven't actually followed the way of nature to prepare for this. So if we change our minds and we start thinking of this is the new year, this is the time of expansion, we automatically will align ourselves with the natural flow of nature.
I love that. The whole, I mean, we all can feel that quickening as we're coming into this more yang season. We, you know, it's not just the spring cleaning that we want to do. You know, we feel more social. We want to be out in the world a little more, where, you know, we're coming out of a period of wanting to hibernate. And you know, even though we have these festivities that we celebrate that are all very much rooted in the light during that season, you know, the natural inclination is to want to curl up on the couch with a book and a cup of tea and a nice blanket and just kind of be. So I love how this all translates into the springtime energy. So when we're talking about wood, and you had mentioned the liver and the gallbladder, what does that mean for people in terms of how they would show up in the springtime?
Absolutely. So, with regards to trying to prep for spring, what the Chinese people and Chinese culture and Chinese medicine has discovered is that you want to follow the pathway of the sun. And it's so common in Western culture to convince yourself on the weekend, I deserve to sleep in. It's a treat, and I'm giving myself something good. And certainly within an hour, you know, you're tired, you want to sleep an extra little bit. Probably not going to be the end of the world, but it's those extra 2-3 hours. Those I'm going to stay up until 3 a.m. and not get up until 12 kind of things. That's usually where the problem comes in. And the reason behind that is that it was described to me kind of like this. When you get up in the morning, you get yourself going. You want to start that car with the ignition and drive to work? Or do you want to push your car to work? That's the difference between getting up or sleeping in. And the reason for that is because you're not following the natural flow of the day. So if you wake up late, you're always chasing an energy, you're behind. And a lot of people will feel that, especially if they have a good circadian rhythm. They're not people who drink coffee or dependent on caffeine. This is something they can feel. That's why there's so many people who wake up before their alarm. They wake up every day at 5 or 10 minutes before their alarm at 6, whatever it is, wherever you are. Will change this as well, because how many hours of light you get. I'm sure as we get more north and they have those, you know, really long days where they have 24 hours of sun, it's going to be a different impact than those who are closer to the equator and everyone here in between. The big thing is, wherever you are, find the natural rhythm of the sun, match it to the best that you can. And this also means going to bed at decent time. So when it comes to winter time, that's pretty much the only time you get to sleep in. After winter, after hibernation, that contractive, you know, you need to stay warm phase. Get up, get up, get up, get up, get up, get up. You're here to work, you're here to live, you're here to have life and enjoy your families. Get up.
Get a move on, friends.
Yeah. I actually had one practitioner I worked with because I've been managing some autoimmune disorders myself. So I've had to do a lot of things with Chinese medicine to keep myself on top of things. And one of the big things was learning how to do this, was getting up with the sun. And it was funny because at the beginning, this was really hard. I'm obviously a Western person. I was raised here and I want to sleep in on the weekend because I've been taught that that's a reward. And I've really learned that it's not. And so one of the tricks, because people, I hear it all the time, but I'm so tired. I need coffee. I need the snooze button. I just can't get out of bed. You don't hit the snooze button. Your alarm goes off. The second your alarm goes off, you kick your legs out of the bed and you get up. There's no nothing about it. Do it. Just do it. And I'm not usually one to say the just do it thing very often. You know, here, Nike trademark. Oops. But you just got to do it. And one of the big things to help you do this is to slap your body all over. And it's called invigorating the yang. So you basically are waking up all of your meridians and all of the channels, and you're moving chi and blood through your entire body. So you pat yourself all over, you give yourself some really good firm pats on the kidney, especially if you're a woman who struggles with her menstrual cycle. This is a fantastic way to start regulating your kidneys so your periods have better flow, and so that you don't feel as much pain when you have your period, is getting up and really wake those kidneys up, smack them, smack them, smack them. And I mean, don't beat yourself, but you know, some good firm patting and whacking of the body, if you will, wakes your yang energy up. And that's what you're trying to do. Coffee essentially convinces your body you're doing this, but what it's doing is it's draining your adrenal glands. So you're dumping a bunch of adrenaline out, or you're aggravating your system with a lot of sugar or dairy or caffeine. It all depends on what you happen to drink and how sensitive you are, what's going to be irritated. But it's the difference between tonifying your body and draining your body, kicking your body versus caressing it, really, even though you're technically smacking your body. It's a loving smack, though.
It's a vigorous love tap, but it's really worth it.
It is, exactly. And this was actually how I got myself on track of doing those things, was getting up, swung my legs out every day and did the tap, 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 tap all over the body. And then the other thing that I would do, and I recommend this for absolutely everyone, start your day with a cup of hot water. And I'm sure you talk about this a lot because I know you do dietary therapy, so you know the value of this. But putting cold water in your body, though some people like to say that this is good for your metabolism, it absolutely is not. It's extremely damaging to your digestive system in Chinese medicine terms. And the reason for that is you're putting something really cold in a hot environment when you've just woken up. Your body's barely gotten going for the day, and it's already going into full tilt work just to warm up that drink, because it can't be absorbed at fridge temperatures. We just can't really do that. In addition to that, if say you are having breakfast quite early and you're having something that's fatty, putting a cold beverage with a fatty food is really, really difficult because it makes the fat solidify. And it's harder for the digestive tract to warm it up and absorb it and break it down. So hot water, always start your day with hot water. Again, the yang energy. Spring is about yang energy rising and expansion. So feed yourself that yang energy, drink that water, pat your body. And then afterwards is breath work. And this is something that also is in the Yellow Emperor. They talk about going out into the yard, loosening your hair. Hair can be a really great thing for for that spiritual connection. There's that association that if you have longer hair, they have their own sensing abilities at the end. So the longer your hair is, the more you can sense things, the more you can pick up energetics. So it's really good to like loosen your hair and to pull it out and let it really flow. And then also taking your fingertips and going through your scalp. So you're waking up all of that energy, all of the blood flow, all of the chi that would be in that area. You have a lot of meridians. So your gallbladder meridian goes on your side of your head, and you have your bladder meridian. The bladder meridian is going to help support your wood meridians because water supports wood. And we see this with watering plants. You have plant water, it's going to grow. So these are all things that you can do to really, really help yourself, specifically in spring.
This is fantastic. I had never heard the scalp massage piece, but that totally makes sense because of where all of those meridians are on the head. This is fantastic. I'm going to incorporate this. I already do the water thing and I vigorously wake myself up with slapping, but but I don't, however, do the scalp massage. Anybody who has worked with me knows that I keep my hair up often, more often than not. So this is a new one that I'm totally going to incorporate. So we've talked about the season and how we can support ourselves during the season. So when we don't live in harmony with the season, what does that mean for our menstrual cycle? Because there are some very pronounced characteristics that tend to surface, particularly in the spring season, for people who are experiencing some menstrual cycle imbalances.
Absolutely. Spring is definitely an important time for women and their menstrual cycles specifically, or anyone who's menstruating, I should say, really, because you want to make sure that you're not hurting the organ that's really mainly responsible for our menstrual function. So it's said in the Yellow Emperor that one should help to survive and avoid killing in springtime. Instead of taking, one should be giving, and one should award and not punish. And so, what this talks about on a less literal level is stop being hard on yourself. The negative self talk, the anger and frustration, the pensiveness, the refusal to express emotion, all of these things damage the liver. And they would be considered taking or killing because they're very contractive and constrictive or cutting in nature. So your self-talk really will change your period. And I think that's something that's not talked about enough. We're always talking about anger, and anger is the emotion associated with the liver. Pensiveness being the lack of showing that anger, both of which are damaging. And actually, sometimes it's worse not to express the anger than to overexpress. Just depends on your constitution. And so we, for the most part, think of this as I don't want to express my anger outward. I don't want to put that negative energy on other people. But we don't stop to think about what we're doing to ourselves. When we look in the mirror and go, oh, I'm so fat. I'm so ugly. I'm not good enough. Da, 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 da. Every time you do that, your liver is stagnating because you're telling yourself something's wrong. And eventually that is going to tell your body, oh, we need to stop doing the things something we're doing is wrong. We're bad. And so if we think we're wrong, we're bad, things don't flow. When things don't flow, the ladies don't flow very well anymore. And that's the problem, is we need to have proper functioning of liver blood to harmonize with the Ren meridian and the Chong meridian and the Dai meridian and your Dantian and all of those different terms that I'm sure anyone who's not super familiar with TCM is like, what are you talking about, lady? And so these are just all the different dynamic systems that the liver has influence over. That's really what that comes down to, is it's all the systems that support your menstrual function. So the root of it really comes down to keeping that liver happy.
Well, and we are locked inside with that voice, right? So, the voice you hear the loudest, the voice you hear the longest is your own. So, in affirmations, I'm huge for affirmations, and sometimes they're really hard. If you look at yourself in the eye, in the mirror, and tell yourself you're beautiful, you may surprise yourself with what your emotional response is to that experience, because we are trapped with that voice in our head all of the time. And it could be little things like, I didn't check all the boxes on my to-do list today. Oh, I'm such a failure. Like, why didn't I get that done? Why didn't I remember this? Oh, crap, I forgot this other thing. And even that tone sends a message to yourself about not being worthy or not being enough or not doing enough. And especially for those of us who have, had to juggle kids, we've been locked in with a heightened level of stress with the pandemic. But even prior to that, you know, we balance so much in our lives as women. We balance our professional and our personal lives, and those forces sometimes can really aggravate some negative self-talk. So it's really important. And I love what you said about the fact that, that voice is such a powerful part of this stagnant liver energy, because it's really true. Anybody who follows me on Instagram, you'll see that I put like morning affirmations up, and you are beautiful and you are enough. And remember today, you're a goddess. Like, I put things like that because sometimes we just get so deep in our shit that we don't see all of the amazing things that we are actually doing. And we're not praising ourselves and taking that moment to praise ourselves for all of the huge list of things that we are accomplishing. We're just focused on that one thing that dropped off the plate. And we're like, I'm such a failure. But you're not. You're amazing. You're a powerhouse. And like we talked about in a previous episode, we talked about how to harness your cyclical energy to increase your productivity because you're not working against the flow of that river. Well, now we're talking about that both from a cyclical standpoint in terms of what's going on inside of your body, but how that meets nature outside of your body. And that even though you experience all 4 seasons during the course of your menstrual month, that each of those internal seasons meets the external season and can create certain symptoms if we're not properly embracing the energy of the external season at the same time. So thank you so much for bringing up that internal voice, because I just think that is such a powerful one. And it's one that, even I have to stare at myself in the mirror and go, you are enough, because there are days that are just overwhelming and frustrating. And I have to remind myself of that. And I know so many of us have to as well.
Absolutely. I absolutely love how much you share on your page with gratitude, with affirmations, with self-talk, and talking about how important that internal monologue really is. Especially, like you said, the internal cycle, the external cycle. It's so important to make sure that you give yourself that space and time. I see so many women, especially with the pressure of, I gotta be a mom, I gotta be a wife, I gotta be a boss babe, I've gotta be a vixen, I gotta. You know what you gotta? You gotta take care of you. And that's sometimes one of the most difficult things we as females, for the most part, do. I'm sure men struggle too, but it's something I see a lot in my practice working with women, that we feel incredibly selfish for taking 2 minutes for ourselves to do that affirmation. Oh, how could I do that? I need to be doing the dishes. My children, they need me. Work needs me. Society needs me. And no, really, what you need is you. And I love the way you talked about the mirror stuff. Another exercise that I recommend to people, and it's a hard one. And I really recognize it's hard because I had to do it. And there were days when I'm like, this is stupid. Oh my God, is this dumb? Why am I doing this? And you just show up for the process. That's the biggest thing that I can say, is just show up. And it doesn't have to be difficult. It can be as simple as every day you look in the mirror and you just say, I love you. Ideally say your name afterwards, like, I love you, Lyndsey, and see how you react. Do you want to burst into tears because maybe that's the first time someone has said it to you in goodness knows how long? Or do you want to cry because you don't believe it? And self-love is so incredibly important for the liver. The liver is the mother of our hearts. If we don't support that wood energy, if we don't take care of ourselves coming through winter into spring, doing the spring necessities and taking us into summer, that is asking for mental unwellness. That is setting yourself up for mental unwellness. Your heart and your mind are your emperor. They're like your number one. They're so important in the body. So we need to take care of the liver, which I actually think you put a post up recently talking about the liver being the general, which is completely true. The liver is the general. He or she, depending on how you want to look at the liver, argues with the body and bosses everybody around. And if it's not doing what it's supposed to do, it'll start kicking the organs and make it do what it's supposed to do. And this is when we see things like constricted appetites. So people who are anorexic, they don't get hungry very easily, or maybe they have, a good cramp in their bowels, and all of a sudden they're running to the toilet because they're getting diarrhea. This comes from the liver not being happy. You can also see this from people who struggle to hold their urine. The weakness of the sphincters can also happen and be caused by an imbalance with spring energy. So as we said, the mother-son relationship or parent-child relationship, the kidneys are the mother to the liver. Kidneys have to do with fear. If you're angry all of the time, the reality is your anger is probably coming from fear or sadness, because both of those are predecessing to the liver, and it's going to drain them. And so when you're draining your kidneys, you lose your sphincter function. So you may not have the ability to hold urine, or you may not be able to hold a bowel movement. It might be run, or you're going in the bathroom in your pants. And that's just not good. No one wants that. So you can see for multiple reasons why it's important, and especially spring. Like, I love that you wanted to start with spring. This is such a great one, because it really is your starting foot. And it's not that you can't make up for it. If for say you're listening to this podcast and it's coming into summer, you're like, I missed all the things. I didn't loosen my hair and I didn't do the stuff. That's okay. It's okay. You can make up for it in the next season. It's just about getting on the train and aligning yourself. And so this would be things like doing self-affirmations and doing that care. Okay, cool. There's 3 days left in spring. Do it now. It's okay. Doesn't matter if you're late to the party. It matters that you show up.
I totally agree. And that's where, when I work with people, I meet them where they're at in the process, both from an emotional standpoint as well as a symptomatic one. So in terms of our menstrual cycle, things that can come out of not living in harmony with the seasons, a lot of us experience a heightened level of irritability during the springtime. Poor sleep can be a big thing. Waking during that 1 to 3 window in the middle of the night, I might have a little firsthand experience with that. But heightened symptoms of PMS. So if you are somebody who tends to experience PMS on a regular basis, you may find that your symptoms get to a very acute place when things are out of balance during the liver season. Digestive issues, like you mentioned, but migraines. I talk to a lot of people about headaches this time of year. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. So springtime also has an association with the term wind. And wind in Chinese medicine is a pathology. So we talk about how the rushing energy, that growing energy, if you're not prepared for spring, it can be really hard on the body. It's a very upward force. So if you're someone who's yin deficient, which is a extremely common underlying cause for fertility or menstrual issues in general, if you have weakened lungs, so say you have asthma or COPD, or you're a smoker, or you're going through grief, any of those things, they're going to impact your resistance to wind. And so this is something that will lead to those migraines. We call it liver fire rising. So a lack of yin to keep that fire rooted down. Usually there's some kind of blood deficiency. So you might find that an individual who isn't prepared for spring, let's create a little case study. So she comes in, she has really bad headache. She has red eyes that are dry and itchy. Her mouth is dry, and she has a very scanty period that's very painful. She has a lot of cramps, particularly, let's say, in that lower back region, and it could favor one side or the other. These are all accounted by not having the liver prepared for this rushing energy. So that's why it's important. I always tell everybody, especially where I live, it's very windy. I'm not sure if it's very windy where you are, but from the season of, it starts in autumn. I'd say from autumn until about the end of May is usually when I tell people wear a scarf all of the time. And the reason for this is because our wind points are located at the back of our nape. So if you look at the names for gallbladder 20 and for bladder 10, they have feng in them, and feng is wind. So that's how you can remember that they're your wind points. Just covering those points, I noticed the patients that I have that were compliant with it got sick considerably less often and didn't catch the pesky spring colds. This legitimately kept them warm, protected the wind invasion, and soothed that liver connection. And there is a connection with your shoulders and your neck and your liver. They do all kind of play together.
And now for a quick break and a word from our sponsor. I don't know about you, but I don't feel like I learned nearly enough about the physical and energetic demands of my adult female body when I was younger. Not Your Mama's Menstrual Course is an online self-study course to get exactly that, the information that most of us didn't get when our periods first started. In this course, I discuss the energetic changes and physical requirements of each phase of your cycle. Working in harmony with your cycle will help lessen your PMS symptoms and help you to properly support each phase of your cycle. Your month is comprised of so much more than just menstruation. There is a beautiful dance of hormones and energies that comprise our entire monthly cycle. Interested in learning more information? Get your copy of Not Your Mama's Menstrual Course today. Now, back to the show. Awesome. Thank you for making that wind connection. This is something that I talk about with my clients a lot. And I will tell them to dress for wind, particularly during their period, just because your ability to fight things off is so much lower during that time frame. But it's a beautiful thing to take through those spring season as well, because we do have a heightened amount of seasonal allergies, colds, things like that. So can you expand a little bit on the wind concept being more than just, I got the seasonal cold?
Yeah, so wind is manifested in a few different ways. The reason that it's associated with spring is because of the association of wood energy. And what you can do is think of a tree. So a tree will grow really tall, extremely tall. If that tree is too rigid, if the wind comes, it will knock it over. So you have to have some flexibility, some sway, some movability when you are working with wood energy. This allows you to have adaptability. So this would be akin to if you're super stressed during your period and you never give yourself a chance to calm down ever, you are the rigid tree. As soon as that wind comes, it's going to knock you down. It's going to hurt because you don't have that ability to move with the wind to a degree. I mean, you don't want to bend right over. That wouldn't be good either, but it's a delicate balance. And so that's how they create that association of wind and wood, and how there has to be that flow. And you can also see the leaves on the trees, if we're thinking about trees with leaves, and how they shake and they move with the wind. And if there's too much wind, they're gonna get going. So what does that look like in a human body? So extreme rigidity would be that tenseness, that I have a headache all of the time. I'm clenching my teeth. I'm grinding. I'm clenching my fists. All of those things are that rigidity, that lack of adaptability. Now, if we go in the opposite direction, we can look at things like strokes, seizures, Parkinson's disease, Bell's palsy, neurological disorders that really start to have that shake. When you get to that side of things, that's a very severe damage. That's when you've started to damage the mother as well, because the neurological aspect is going to start being present, which is tied with the kidneys. So then you have a kidney and a liver problem. And this is how the progression of dis-ease, I'm going to call in this because it's not disease, it is dis-ease, starts. And why we want to know where that root is the root the liver? Are you a constantly stressed out human being that you don't practice breathing techniques? You have negative self-talk. You're running on, 3 cups of coffee and you're not eating well and all of those things. Your body's going to get depleted and it's going to run out of steam. And so other organs will start making up for it. So specifically when it comes to menstrual health, those 2 organs are extremely important. Kidneys govern reproduction. Liver governs the blood aspect of our periods. These 2 things need to be in harmony. So when we have too much wind exposure, it starts getting even more complicated as it moves backward into that kidney phase from the liver. And usually then the lungs start playing a role. And that's where things like miscarriages start really coming into play, and the failure to hold the baby because you don't have that upward energy. It can't hold the liver. So we look at the generating phase. We've talked a lot about the generating phase, the mother sun. There's also the constrictive phase. So your lungs control your liver controls your spleen controls your kidneys, and your kidneys control your heart. And then your heart controls your lungs, and on it goes around the star, I guess is the way to describe that. So this is why it's not super cut and dry. You can't just say, oh, it's just the liver. We have to look at several different factors, and that's where the different complications come. So protect your wind points. You're both protecting your lung and your liver. So it's a dual action. Hitting your meridians that are on the scalp by loosening the hair and doing the scalp massage, you're helping the kidneys, bladder meridian more specifically, which is attached to the kidneys, and the gallbladder, which helps the liver. So this is why I suggest things that will hit multiple points, because ultimately you need to have that support. And that's why the previous season and the following season is so important. So if you're going to prep for your spring, and make sure that you have good menstrual health for that, check your winter. See how you're doing for winter. Are you being really expansive? Are you being crazy? Are you trying to bang out all of your new projects all in the winter and expand, and then you plan all your vacation in the summer, which is very typical of Western? It's actually very oppositional of how the natural flow goes. And so that would be what I would recommend for people to look at is, are you overly expansive during a time of contraction? Are you contracting during a time of expansion? I like to keep it simple because it's complicated. So that keeps it really simple.
I love that. So, okay, we have talked about affirmations, we've talked about scalp massage, and some simple ways that we can help protect and support multiple organ systems in our body. Let's talk about food. And we're going to pull food into this. Anybody who's worked with me knows that food is one of my jams that we talk about on a regular basis. So if we're thinking about springtime, things are becoming more green. So, green foods are going to be really supportive. Would you like to talk a little bit about the flavors of the season and the kinds of foods that would be supportive for liver stagnation?
Absolutely, yeah. Food is fantastic. Food is medicine. So I love that this is a big part of your practice. It's something that I'm always excited about. So, with regards to the season, specifically for spring, we're looking at the flavor sour. And too much sour can be too hard on the liver. So you don't want to be mowing down on like those super sour candies that the kids are eating. What are those? Like the warheads and all that jazz. That's pretty intense. And the sugar is also really hard on the spleen and the stomach. So we want to keep that in consideration. But when we talk about things like grapefruit, lemon, this is a really great way to help move the liver. It has a moving, astringent type quality depending on what you're trying to do. So we say that dampness is another pathology in Chinese medicine that can be really bothersome. It can stagnate the liver, it can gum up the works, it can cause some really uncomfortable periods, things like that. You can use that sour astringent nature to help get that out of the way, which supports the liver's desire to move because it always wants to be moving. It does not like sitting still. It is the A-type personality. Go, go, get it done. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. And
It's so true.
we kind of nickname it the arsehole of all the organs because it's got time for nothing. It's like let's just go. So if you had to always be on the go go go, well, what does your mama always tell you to do? Eat your greens. Eat your greens, eat your greens, eat your greens. Even though no one really likes them, maybe you do. It depends on your taste. But some people, they're like, I don't want to. It's the worst. What you do? You take your greens, you steam them, and you put lemon or a sour flavor on it. And this is like a super tonic for your liver when you combine that green color and all of the nutrients that come from green vegetables with that sour. That is like your go-to. If you're going to just be like, yeah, I'm all about my liver, go for a nice steamed spinach with a little bit of lemon juice on it and maybe some rice. That's fantastic for supporting your liver and your spleen. Broccoli, again, really great, looks like a tree. And that's another thing in Chinese medicine is if you want to fix an organ, look at the shape of the food. There is that association that if it looks like what you're trying to treat, it's probably going to help it. And we see this with walnuts. Walnuts look like little brains. Well, we know that they're really great for supporting DHA, DHEA, and other oils that are really supportive for brain function. So there is that correlation, which is really great. And then you also want to consider what can drain that. So if you eat too much spicy food, this can be damaging, not just to the heart, but to the liver as well, because it's so fiery in nature. And since wood element supports the fire, by burning wood, you can create ash. You want to make sure you don't consume too many fiery foods while you're trying to support your liver as well.
This is great. I actually during the springtime will put a little bit of lemon juice in that warm water that I have in the morning. Not
That's
a lot,
great.
but just a little bit just helps to, I don't know, get things moving first thing in the morning. But dark leafy greens are great. And some people are turned off from them because of how strong they taste. But that strong taste is actually why we need them. They are great to build blood. They are great to help get things moving. So I'll tell people black and blue in the winter time, but now that we're in the spring, think green, baby. So while we're talking about movement, that also begs the question of exercise and moving our body during the springtime. Would you like to explain a little bit about how we can create the appropriate balance in movement during the spring?
Yeah, so when it comes to movement in the spring, this is a little bit more in line with the Western perspective because we do get to be a little bit more out there. We get to have that harder type exercise. We want to be careful, again, not to be too hard. So weightlifting is okay, but extreme weightlifting is really hard, especially on the kidneys, which we know supports the liver. When you are working out, one of the things that we want to consider is, what is your constitution? Are you a wood type person, which would be someone who is typically on the taller side, more on the slender side? They might have a green hue to their skin. They tend to have longer fingers and just longer type extremities, that type of thing. They kind of look like trees. Those individuals are going to thrive if they've prepared themselves for spring to do more expansive things. But if, say, you're more of, say, a water type, even though you're in the springtime, and this is the time of expansion, if you are a water type, you still may not want to do heavy expansion work. So there is a little bit of knowing your type. And there's tons of resources on finding that. And I could probably give you something to pop up for everybody to look at so that they can find out what element they are. So I'll do that for you so that you can share that. So I think it's important. And you're going to be a mix. I'm going to be right up front. You're probably not going to be a pure wood or a pure metal or a pure anything like that. But roughly describing, metal type people tend to be on the white colored side. They tend to be very pale, even if they are individuals that are not Caucasian. They just have this paleness to them. They have very square faces. They're very squarey people, very robust. They have that strength. Fire type people are similarly shaped, but they're going to have more of that heat to them. They're going to have a redness, a fiery, a passion. With spleen people, they tend to be a little bit more on the earthy, round side. They're joyful. They have big cheeks typically. They can have really nice eyes. They're very wonderful people, very grounded people. And then watery people, they tend to be plump. You can tell that they retain that water energy. They're very quiet. They're slower in nature. They are very embraced with their yin. We can learn a lot from water people. Western culture would very easily put them in a like, oh, that's not great. No, we have so much to learn from water people. So try not to take the it's not a great element, it's a great element to have as your element type. So each of those types of features, think about that for yourself, where you kind of fall in line. If you are a wood type, a fire type, you're going to be more on the expansive side. If you are more of a water or a earth or a metal type, you're going to be less expansive. So less expansive things would be doing like Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, and then altering within those systems to follow their seasonal exercises. So I know Qigong specifically has things for times of the year that you do, or specific organ sounds that you'll do at different times. And this is how you would start applying those individuals. If you're more of a wood type or a fire type, you get to go a little bit more into that, running the marathons, doing some of the heavier lifting and those types of things, because your body just will support it a little bit better. In general, though, everybody gets to be more expansive than they normally are. And that's the general rule for it, is you can expand. The big thing I'd recommend with every single exercise, no matter what time of year it is, do your exercise, get your blood rate up, get going, and then close it with something meditative. You need to have that spiritual calmness to the heart after you get everything revving. That creates that balance. And it helps if you don't know exactly where you fall on that element scale. If you're like a little unsure, it's like your little safeguard. You don't need to worry about it so much. You know, it's like, yeah, if I overdid it, I'll just sit here, meditate a little, and the body is intelligent. It will figure it out, and it will give you signals. It'll tell you if you've gone too far.
I love this because I keep telling everybody that it's all about balance. So, nothing to an extreme is a good thing. Too much rest, too much activity, I weightlift, I exercise, I like to box, but, I have to balance that energy with my cycle, with the season. And I love the recommendation to bring meditative practices into the end of a workout. It's a really great way to bring your heart rate back down, to get grounded back in your body again. There's so many of us that even if we bring some of those types of activities into our lives, we go right from the gym, grab our bag, and head off to the next thing, and we don't take that few minutes of pause to reground ourselves. So if we were to take that time after a workout, about how long would you recommend somebody stay in that contemplative space before they move on to the next activity?
Ooh, nice word. I like it. So it's an individual thing. I think if you're the type of person who gets really frustrated and you're like, oh, I don't want to do this, you need to do it longer. Just one of those hard truths.
It's true. If you find that your fuse is a little short, you, again, all about creating balance. If the fuse is shorter, then your meditative time needs to be a little longer. I also talk to people about microcosmic orbit breathing, bringing
Yes.
energy up from the ground and back down through the body. I find because it harmonizes the ren and the du, which run along the middle of the back of your body and the middle of the front of your body, for those of you who aren't familiar with those terms, bringing that energy up and down and through your system helps to really balance things. So even if you aren't seeing an acupuncturist, which I highly recommend everyone should see, either an acupuncturist or an Acutonics practitioner or somebody that can help move your energy in these ways, these very specific ways to help with harmony during every season. I literally swear by it. So if you don't already have a practitioner, I highly recommend it. But if you aren't already working with somebody, I can include a link in the show notes to talk about microcosmic orbit breathing so that you can start bringing some of that practice into your day to day, because I find just carving out 10 or 15 minutes to do that in a mindful way helps me be a lot more balanced human when dealing with children and other sorts of stress. Love my children, but there are days where the stress level gets to a climax. I do have teenagers in the house, and that type of breathing is really, really helpful for me to be able to compartmentalize what is happening. For anyone who has a teenager, you probably resonate with this statement. But really, it's all about being able to get back into your body and balance out what's going on in there.
You poor soul.
It's an amazing stage of life. However, it comes with its challenges, just like every stage of parenthood. So, I just find myself needing to do more of this breathing lately than I did when my people were slightly smaller.
Well, thank goodness that you got the breathing to get you through this, right?
And the acupuncture.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I love that you brought in the microcosmic orbit. I think that's a fantastic one. It's super easy. Most people can do that breathing. Like today, you can sit down, nice straight back, relax, take a nice deep breath in, deep breath out, and focus on putting your tongue to the roof of your mouth to complete the cycle. And when you're exiting the cycle, you're exhaling, you take the tongue down and you release all of that. We'll call it negative energy. It doesn't have to be, it could just be releasing. It doesn't always have to be good or bad. We don't have to have duality, but a lot of people like to envision breathing in the good, taking in the white, letting out the dark, or letting out the evil, or whatever your terminology might be. And it's really, really wonderful for calming down your nervous system, oxygenating your body, connecting with your spiritual self, your higher self. You're running through all of your chakras. You've got that third eye activation really, really strong, as well as your throat chakra. Those are your two main ones that you're going to really hit through that breathing. So I think that's great. One other cycle that we talk about that's less talked about, but I think is really valuable, and especially since we're talking about the time of liver, spring, and women's menstruals, is the one that goes from your shoulders, basically. So it's the circle that goes the other way. So you could go from one shoulder over the head to the other shoulder, down the torso of the body, and then it crosses over and comes back up. This is the liver and the lung connection. And you know how you mentioned the 3 o'clock in the morning wake up time? This is associated with that waking up. So when this cycle, I wish the people on the podcast could see what I'm doing, because it's so hard to explain this in words for you guys. But you know, it's the circle that goes the other way. And this is a cycle that I work with a lot, like a lot in my Acutonics practice, especially, but in my acupuncture practice as well. It's so important, because basically what it is if the liver and the lungs can't switch energy to each other, we wake up. And it causes that disruption to the spirit of the liver, which is called the hun. And the hun rises out of the body, and it kind of can scare itself. This is why in feng shui they say don't have a mirror in your bedroom, because when the hun rises, it can startle you and it will wake you up. And then it's like being scared. Some people, it's significant enough that they will get insomnia. Their bodies are like, nope, we can't do this. Oh my gosh, it's scary. We saw a ghost, kind of thing. Other people, they just wake up and they're just bothered, and, you know, maybe 10, 15 minutes, they'll go back to sleep. Just kind of depends on how severely the cycle has been disrupted. So this is one that you can work on as well. So the fancy medical term is the acromion, but that nice bulge that's in the front of the pockets of your shoulders. So if you were to reach in there, you just want to fall into that divot that's just underneath that bulge that comes in your shoulders. So this is called lung 1. So anyone who has the Google can just Google this and know what the heck I'm saying. And then we also have the gate of hope. So the gate of hope sits in line with the nipples. So ladies, just pretend that your nipples don't move, that they stay in one spot. It's supposed to be about the 4th intercostal space is roughly where the nipple's supposed to sit. You want to go in line with the nipple, and sitting basically where our bra straps are, where that awful, you know, underwire is. Yeah, there should be a little divot in that area. And that's called the gate of hope, or liver 14. So those 4 points, so 2 points named, 4 points collectively, are the cycle. Those are the points for that cycle and for creating that harmony. So you can do it crosswise. So you could do, like, on one side, you could do your liver 14, and then the other side do the lung 1, and massage those, and then switch while you're doing your breathing. And this will encourage that cycle to come back again. So extremely good. If you're a person who, like, your period is days behind, like, you're just like, it's not coming, it's here, I feel it. Why won't it just start already? Do this. This will help create that harmony amongst the liver and the lungs again, which can help push that period and make it start, ideally with less cramping as well.
I love that. Yep. See, I've learned some new things that I'm totally taking into my own practice, my own breathing. I have always loved with Acutonics working that lung 1, liver 14 with people, particularly if they are experiencing sleep disturbances, but I hadn't thought to do it at the same time that I was doing breathing. So again, new things that I've learned that I'm going to have to try. So thank you so much for that. Well, I believe I have had all of my questions answered that I was really hoping to share with all of my listeners. But do you have any final pieces of wisdom that you would like to share with us? And how can we find you?
Oh, if we start digging in that treasure trove of wisdom, we're never going to get out of here. I'm the
Well, I'll have
worst.
to have you back. So we stay
Oh.
tuned, everybody. We will definitely be bringing Dr. Tucker back on the show.
Yes, just tell me what you want to know and I'll dig into the crazy tickle trunk and pull out what I can. What can I share with you guys? I want to share something else with you. What's one more thing? Um, all right, here's a nice little bonus that I'm going to throw in here. This is something that I recommend, men or women, doesn't matter, but anyone who's struggling with their kidney energy. So if you feel like you have low back pain, knee pain, joint pain, if you're sweating, if you get night sweats or day sweats, if you feel just out of balance, you're just not quite centered, something isn't quite right. This is something that you can do that's really relaxing. You can do it for months on end if you want. You can do it for a few weeks, whatever kind of works for you. Your body will tell you what it wants and doesn't want. So take a basin, fill it with some hot water, not full, but enough that it would cover your feet if you put your feet in the basin. Pick a basin that's big enough for your feet. You got size 14 feet, get a nice big one. And so what you want to do is you want to go and boil the kettle, and you're going to go take your basin and your kettle, and you can go and sit in front of the television or buy a podcast. If you're listening, you could be listening to this while you're doing it, whatever you like. Put your feet in the basin. As your feet get used to the temperature of the water, add more water from the kettle. You're going to do this periodically for 30 to 60 minutes before you go to bed. What this is going to do is it's going to help regulate the yin and the yang of your body. So kidneys govern yin and yang. When we have period problems, it's oftentimes linked to a yin or yang imbalance. Since our kidneys govern reproduction and our periods have a reproductive quality, one of the easiest ways to start addressing any problems you have is to just help out the mother organ. This organizes and regulates the kidneys. So before you worry about trying herbs and getting crazy with your diet, this is a nice, easy, relaxing thing you can do right off the hop to help support really good menstrual health.
Awesome. This is one that I do quite regularly. And sometimes I will have my clients steam, which we'll talk about steaming more in another episode, but then incorporate this into their routine as they're getting ready for bed. I know that it totally changes my quality of sleep when I bring this practice in. Sometimes I'll add a little Epsom salt if I need a little bit of magnesium. But I really, really love how this feels. You can feel your nervous system dial down while you're sitting and doing that. So that is a fantastic recommendation. Thank you so much for bringing that to the forefront. So we unfortunately are all out of time for the day, but thank you so much, Dr. Tucker, for joining us for another episode of the Reproductive Rebel podcast. And if people are looking to reach out to you, how would they find you?
Oh, well, thank you for having me. This was fun. This was a nice adventure. So thank you. Yeah, this was really great, actually. If people are looking to connect and find me, I am on Instagram. I am at Return to Ohm, and Ohm is spelled OHM, just like our Acutonics. Ohm forks are spelt. And I am on Facebook, not as often. It's easier to get a hold of me on Instagram, but you can Facebook message me if that's how you are on the social medias. And it's again at Return to Ohm on Facebook as well. And you can email me at returntohm@outlook.com.
Wonderful. So we will have all of the contact information for Dr. Tucker in the show notes. If you are in Alberta, Canada, definitely seek her out for Acutonics and acupuncture sessions. She is in the Calgary area. But you'll want to reach out directly and arrange all of that because Acutonics can be done at a distance. We'll talk about that in another episode. But again, thank you so much for your wisdom and your time, Dr. Tucker. We are just so grateful that you were able to join us. And this has been such a rich learning experience for me.
Well, I'm so glad you could learn something from me. I'm not just crazy talking to you. At least some value got out today.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of our listeners are going to be really grateful for the items that they're able to embrace and bring into their regular practice, because you offered so many great gems that they can put to work today to be able to help their health and well-being. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Moon Essence is excited to bring you a new resource, the Moon Essence app. Moon Essence is a one-of-a-kind resource providing women a holistic way to support their reproductive health and wellness. Feel in the driver's seat of your own health with evidence-based interventions proven to decrease symptoms experienced with your cycle each month, increase your fertility, and ease life transitions for women in every phase of life. Empowering women's bodies with education about their health journey is the heart of our work. Head over to the Apple App Store or Google Play and download this free educational resource today. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. If you like what you hear, please consider making a contribution to the Reproductive Rebel podcast. Your support, in any amount, helps us continue to inspire current and future generations. Show your love for this content in the listener support section below. And thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Reproductive Rebel. Reproductive Rebel is recorded by certified peri-steam hydrotherapist, herbalist, sound healer, and Chinese nutritional therapist Adrienne Irizarry of Moon Essence LLC. If you are interested in setting up an appointment with Adrienne for one-on-one support, ordering from our store, or checking out our course offerings, visit our website at moonessence.life. Be sure to subscribe to our newsletter to get insider information on upcoming events and offerings. Join the conversation. Like us and follow Moon Essence Me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn. Your voices make this program possible. Thank you all for your continued support.